Head of the Hotels and Hospitality team at international law firm Bird and Bird. I'm delighted to welcome you today to this webinar, which is titled Adapting to the New Talent Demands in the Hospitality Sector. This is the 16th hospitality-focused webinar, which we have co-hosted with our friends at EP Business in Hospitality, HBS and AlixPartners over the last 2 years. Today, our distinguished speakers will focus on the question, where and how will we find the staff to run our businesses, which must be the most pressing question facing our industry today. Please can I remind you to use the Q&A function at the bottom of your screens to raise any burning questions that you might have and which you would like our panelists to answer. If we can't get to those questions during the course of the webinar today, then we will answer them afterwards. The session today will end at 12 noon. Before I introduce our first speaker, I'd like to invite you to answer some polling questions, which will now appear on the screen. So the first question I'd like you to look at, please, is how short-staffed is your hotel or organisation at present? Please choose one of the options listed. I think the answers are going to pop up at the end here because I'm not seeing any answers coming up at the moment. Secondly, how much are your hotels or organisations' total payroll costs expected to change in 2022? Again, could you please tick one of the 4 options listed? The third question, how does your learning and development or training budget in 2022 compare with 2019? Again, you have a single choice here with the 3 questions. And please do scroll down. I think you have a scrolling down function on the right-hand side of the screen to enable you to see all the questions. Question 4 is how many of your senior executives, whether CEO, CFO, and board of director level, are below the age of 40? Again, a single choice answer, please, from one of the options listed. So just a brief resume of the vote here. So how short-staffed is your hotel? Interesting, we're being told not at all. Is a very low answer. So most people are saying that more than 10%, there are more than 10% fewer staff than we need, which is an interesting answer. Then question 2, most people have answered that their organisation's total payroll costs are expected to change by up to 10% in 2022. Thirdly, how does your learning and development training budget compare with 2019? Most people are saying it will be about the same. And lastly, how many of your senior executives are below the age of 40? 0% is the most popular answer there. Which will give everyone some food for thought, perhaps. So if we could close the polling questions, and I'm going on to introduce our first speaker today, Stephen Cassidy, who will hopefully be ready to take over the session. So Stephen, if you could unmute, and I think you have some slides to share with us today. Thank you.
I do. Thank you, Karen. We'll just pull those slides up shortly. Okay. Hopefully you can see the slides there. And thank you once again, Karen. I'm absolutely delighted to have this opportunity to speak to this esteemed audience today. And I, greatly applaud the initiative of HVS, Bird and AlixPartners, and of course, EP Business and Hospitality, and bringing us all together today, bringing this group together on this crucial subject for hospitality. It's never been a more important subject. Some would say it's never has been a more important subject for hospitality. So delighted to be here to talk to you about this today. Why is this an important subject? Well, hospitality at its core is about people. It's about human interaction. It's about human connection, and getting the right people who are motivated and happy is crucial to delivering hospitality businesses. We have to, as an industry, have people at the heart of what we do, and it's always been a focus for us here at Hilton. We recognize that we are a business of people, serving people, and it's why I'm particularly proud that 2 weeks ago we were awarded third place in the Great Places to Work award scheme. That's actually the 4th year running that we've been in a top 3 position in the top hospitality company. It's central to our strategy. It's central to hospitality, and a crucial and a particularly crucial time, because the employment landscape has started to change out of all recognition. I mean, without doubt, COVID crushed hospitality, created enormous job uncertainty. We witnessed, as you all did, the closures of our businesses, and often repeat closures. Furlough was introduced, and high levels of redundancy were seen throughout the sector as the businesses attempted to right size and see through the crisis. Some 660,000 hospitality jobs were actually lost due to the pandemic, and as a consequence, the brand of hospitality was without doubt damaged amongst potential employees. Hospitality became less attractive, and in fact, surveys towards the end of the crisis were suggesting that only 1 in 5 people would actually consider a job in hospitality. COVID-19 also exacerbated the impact of Brexit, with EU nationals who were a high proportion of our workforce leaving, and still today some have chosen to not come back, those that have the right to work in the UK. So as a consequence, the proportion of EU workers employed in hospitality has fallen to its lowest level since before the pandemic. And fourth, the hospitality software company showed that EU employees now make up 28% of the industry workforce, whereas prior to the pandemic in 2019, that was sitting at 42%. So nearly 100,000 EU workers have left the industry in the 2 years to June, according to ONS. And yet today, there are 188,000 hospitality job vacancies in the UK. And this isn't just a challenge for us, this is a structural challenge across the UK. In fact, I was listening to the BBC News on the way in here this morning, and the ONS released statistics today that there are now more vacancies in the UK than the number of unemployed. Unemployment levels are down to a historical low. In fact, 3.7%, I recall, was quoted, which hasn't been at that level since the early 70s. So it's no surprise that not just hospitality is feeling the pain of this. Farming, healthcare, aviation, all are facing workforce shortages. Airlines have had to cancel flights, as perhaps many of you personally experienced. Huge supply chain issues due to lorry driver shortages. And you can see some of the responses to this with the likes of EasyJet coming out yesterday, offering £1,000 for staff to stay to the end of the summer. So the challenges are fairly obvious, but what's been quite interesting is that a number of trends that we saw prior to COVID have really accelerated through COVID. And in particular, the changing attitudes towards work. How we work has fundamentally changed. We've become used to the concept of working from home. And I think that plus other factors have really elevated the importance amongst employees of flexibility. We've seen the rising concept of wanting to work at will, the growth of the gig worker sector, the narrative around increasing work-life balance. And we're being told by potential employees that is never more important than it is today. So all of these factors are kind of crashing together and creating a real challenge for the industry. And the CBI tells us that this is not a short-term problem. The manifestation of some of these challenges in the labour shortages could be with us for the long term. So the important piece is, what do we need to do about this? UK Hospitality has published a 12-step action plan that seeks support from government in ensuring that our industry can thrive through the challenges. And that action plan is available on the UKH website. I won't go through it in detail. But one of the things that UK Hospitality is keen to do is spread the word of the importance and the quality of careers that are available within hospitality, and are launching an initiative called Hospitality Rising to get that message across. And I'll come back to that as I discuss some of the things, the detailed things that we can do as an industry to confront these challenges. First and foremost, we do need to adapt. We need to compete with new offers that are available in the market, the likes of the Uber and Deliveroo opportunities to create that work at will proposition for future employees is crucial. And that ability for workers to be able to choose when and where they work is an aspect of, if we're honest, a proposition that we've been unable to fulfill to date, but something that we need to do so going forward in order to be attractive to new demographics, to new markets. And one of the things that we've been doing at Hilton, particularly taking advantage of the scale of business that we have in London, is offering flexible shifts across our London hotels, which gives employees the right to work and the opportunity to work at any hotel in the London area. We're also keen, and we're being told that fast pay is a crucial aspect of the employee value proposition. Being able to pay workers for work nearly immediately is critical, and we've launched initiatives to make that happen. But I think it's also important to reflect on the fact that getting the basics right is key. For employees, their first impressions of employment in hospitality is key, and having a great onboarding experience for workers is critical. Having a good reception when they come into the business. As Karen mentioned, having access to training and development opportunities is critical. Being able to see a pathway to development and growth is a critical basic. Having a great boss and great leadership within our business, something that employees tell us time and time again is a table stakes for staying with our company, is having a great boss and strong leadership within the business. Being treated with dignity and respect should not be taken for granted. Investing in back of house facilities is an important aspect of that. If we're asking our workers to operate in luxury, highly differentiated customer environments, then giving them the dignity and respect of having the same accommodation back of house, we believe is crucially important. And we should not forget at this point in time in particular, this high turnover environment and pressure that's been placed on our workers is incredibly disruptive and in many cases demotivating, and can create well-being and mental health issues. And giving our employees access to resources that can help with that is crucial. We also believe at Hilton that creating a diverse and inclusive environment is critical. This makes your business more attractive, not only to prospective employees, but also to customers. And it also widens the talent pool. Throughout the last few years, Hilton have been making meaningful connections with organizations such as the Down Syndrome Association, Fox's Academy down in Minehead, where 8 graduates are now working within Hilton hotels, and we're looking to increase that number. Our relationship with the armed forces is critical. So the end of a career in the armed forces, we're creating opportunities in hotels. And one such example is our chief engineer at Hilton Brighton. So after 24 years in submarines with the Navy, is now running our engineering and maintenance department down there. And of course, very recently, or more recently, we are working with the Afghan and Ukrainian refugee community to not only provide accommodation where it's necessary, but create jobs and career opportunities throughout the UK. The one piece I wanted to flag here is the big change that's taken place in the landscape for recruitment. That this now needs to be very thoughtful, very targeted. It's no longer a process of recruitment where there's a faceless application online, which is responded to by a robotic process. We believe we have to showcase the talent within our industry, within our company, and within our industry, and that inspires future workers. So a case in point is our chef recruitment campaign that's ongoing at the moment, where we start with showcasing individuals, chefs that are operating today, and we talk about their experiences in Hilton and their careers and their achievements using social media, but also leave it with an invitation to attend a careers event. I was at such a careers event last night. We had a chef recruitment event at Galvin's at Hilton Park Lane, where I met some 50 chefs who were inspired by the social media campaign to attend this event. They were also then able to meet the individuals that were being showcased through that. So creating authentic human connections is critical. Recruitment is no longer, or it should no longer be a process. It should be about a connection made with a future employee. So at this chef recruitment event last night, I was asked the first 2 questions I was asked were quite interesting. So the demographic was, broadly speaking, under 30s, male and female, predominantly female. And the first question I was asked is, what is your approach to veganism? The second question I was asked is, what is Hilton doing about the environment? And this is another trend that's clearly accelerated, not just with potential staff. Our customers are demanding this. Our owners demand that there is a clear strategy on ESG. Team members want purposeful work, and they want to purposely work for a company with values that they share, and that's coming through loud and clear as we enter this new market. So last but not least, let me do one more plug there for Hospitality Rising and spreading the word. This team have raised some £600,000 of a fighting fund so far to market hospitality. The job is really to convince you that your sons, your daughters, your nieces and nephews can have successful careers in hospitality. there's many stories out there of that being the case, and we need to showcase that, and we need to spread the word, but we do need the support from the industry in doing so. So have a look at UK Hospitality website in regards to this. Let's start spreading the word about what an amazing career can be had in hospitality. Our industry succeeds because it has brilliant people who care about delivering great service. It's always been about talent. Thank you very much for your time today.
Thank you very much, Stephen. I have one question for you, if I may. And you did touch on it during the course of your talk there under the diversity and inclusion heading. One of the issues which is clearly and apparently facing our sector today is the severe lack of women in it, especially at senior levels. Anyone who attended the Berlin Hotel Conference will have seen the huge imbalance between white men predominantly and women in the sector, not to mention other minorities. Do you think the industry recognises this as an issue, and how best can we all take some real action once and for all to start addressing it?
That's a big question, Karen, and thank you for answering it. I think I touched on that when I was talking. I briefly talked about that in the context of the chef recruitment activity that I was at last night, where I was looking into the audience. It was 50 potential chefs, and the majority were female. I was extremely pleased to see that. One, that we've created a positive narrative around working in kitchen environments for female leaders. We're very proud that at the Conrad St. James, we have an all-female kitchen crew led by Sally,
of course, who I saw made a huge splash on the Great British Menu, didn't she, recently? That was wonderful to see. Yeah,
it was. And you know, I think a word that I used extensively throughout my presentation was the word flexibility. Now, whether it's about attracting females into the industry and progressing up the organization, or other groups. I mentioned young people with learning difficulties. I mentioned armed forces that are coming out of the armed forces, Afghan and Ukrainian refugees. Flexibility is critically important. Adapting your employment proposition to suit the particular demographic that you're facing is crucial. One size does not fit all, but we absolutely need to get behind a drive for a more diverse and inclusive environment. Not only is it crucial for the employment narrative, but our customers are demanding it, and rightly so.
Mm-hmm. Thank you, Stephen. I'm glad to see that Hilton is leading the charge there, and I think there's a lot of other companies that would be well advised to sort of listen to some of the initiatives that are going on that you've referred to. So thank you very much. Again, I'd urge everyone, please do use the Q&A function if you do have any other questions that you would like our speakers to answer during the course of the session. But I'd now like to move on with thanks again to Stephen. I'd like to move on to our next section of today's session, which is an interview by Chris Shepherdson, the CEO of EP Business in Hospitality, of Ruud Roland, of the École Hôtelière de Lausanne, and Donald Sloan, who's the chair of the Oxford Cultural Collective. In fact, Ruud is the former Director General of the École. So if I could hand over to you, Chris, and your two panelists, that would be great. Thank you.
That's very kind, Karen. Thank you very much. And well done, Stephen. That was a great presentation. Welcome, Donald and Ruud. Just to give some background, Donald is chair of the Oxford Cultural Collective now, was head of school at Oxford Brookes Hospitality School from 2003 to 2017. And the school was actually recognized as one of the top 3 in the world in 2016 at the Worldwide Hospitality Awards. Ruud was formerly dean at the Hague Hotel School and former Director General at the Lausanne Hotel School as well. So I think it's fair to say we've got 2 of the top educationists in the world to give their views on how they see the landscape today. So leading into that, Donald, shall I start with you?
You could do.
You are obviously a real advocate for more progressive thinking in education. Do you want to explain your thoughts on that?
Well, I think it was interesting listening to Stephen sort of reinforcing what we all know about the labour challenges facing the industry, not only in the UK, but internationally, and the creative approaches that Hilton and others are taking to try and solve that problem. And I worry, actually, just to start with the negative, and we won't dwell on negatives for very long, but I do worry that because of some critical challenges facing higher education in the UK, specifically in the realm of hospitality, that hospitality schools are less well placed than was once the case to contribute to solving these labour challenges that Stephen very eloquently outlined. So, for example, student numbers and applications to higher education institutions in our field have been declining year on year for a number of years. There are, it's unstable, but the general trend is not positive. There's been significant disinvestment in specialist facilities. We've seen that at a number of institutions. I may get myself in trouble, but I feel sometimes that academic research is a preoccupation within institutions, and maybe it's not delivering impact or a perception of relevance in the way in which it should. Student debt is climbing. It's not unusual for young people to leave British universities with 50, 60,000 pounds worth of debt, and that's putting a great deal more scrutiny on, quite rightly, on the nature of the experience they're having and the perceived value of the experience they're having. And industry partnerships potentially lack sort of depth and focus. And the final thing I would say in terms of challenges before we get onto the positives is that universities are overrun with bureaucracy. And I do have a genuine concern for those good people working in hospitality institutes whose creativity and their space to focus on the student experience is limited because it's process-driven education in a way that isn't terribly helpful. So I do think, to go back to your question, that it's time for a system that is free from these constraints, that is more creative, is more innovative, is more focused on the students. And, and I've got the scars on my back to sort of back this up, if you like, but if something isn't working, then for how long do you keep trying to change it from within? And maybe we have now reached a point where it's time to envisage a new, more progressive system, as you say. And one final thing I would say, Chris, Stephen also outlined the scale of this problem. I'm not suggesting that the creation of a new institute, for example, would solve, in terms of the number of graduates, the problems that the industry is facing when it's looking for potential management and leadership employees. But what it can do is have a disproportionate effect on the perceived status of careers in our field and on the popularity of that as a career option for very talented young people. So I'll let Ruud have a...
We'll come back onto that in a second.
Exactly, yeah.
Your thoughts on this? Because you've always been, I mean, you see it from a global perspective. Is this a global issue, or is it more of a UK issue that what Don was talking about? Because you've always been a great believer that the UK's had a great system and perhaps it's declined over the years.
Yeah, I'll come back to that in a minute, Chris. I think it's a global issue. In fact, just to reiterate what Don is saying, essentially it's not so difficult. It is connecting the dots. It is connecting between what the industry needs, maybe not what they want, but what they need, and what students want in terms of what they have in ambition, experience, motivation for the industry. And hospitality education is just between there to connect these dots. But the interference is there, what already explained by Don, and it's the academic interference. This is about systems, it's about leadership, what he explained. It's about culture, so irrelevant, not always relevant research, rigor more than relevance. And there you hit the nail, because I'm a bit older than many of you, but I remember in the 80s, the best hospitality schools in the world were in the UK. That is maybe a surprise to you, but these were absolutely fantastic in terms of connect with the industry. Even their research was very much applied schools like Huddersfield, Sheffield, Brighton, Bournemouth, Manchester, they were all great. They were really in the top of the hospitality schools in the world. And in a way, it's sad to say you lost that, that in fact, over the years, because I believe you became too much, let me call it, embraced by the university culture, academic culture, and that faculty was driven more in the academics than be connected with the industry. But the moment you are able to repair that relationship with the industry and see it as true partnership instead of just a pipeline, then I think there are many opportunities to make it better. But that means, in fact, fundamentally, you can only change if you are able to disconnect yourself from the, let me now say, rigid academic system you have. And that is in the world, but that's also very much, I think, what I've seen applicable to the UK.
Okay, so we've got a structural problem and the focus isn't all right. Yeah. Donald, how would you like to see change take place now?
Well, I think just to reiterate, the first point is, do we change from within or do we do something different? And a few years ago, when I was still in the HE system, I would have gone for the former and said, no, we've got to sort of advocate for change from within. But I actually now have reached the view that that probably isn't possible, and we need to focus on the creation of a system that is focused on hospitality and not distracted. So I would be looking for a system, to talk about the structural change that's required that you refer to, that has a different and more distinctive educational philosophy that's more appropriate to our domain. And within that, I would say education that is immersive, that is experiential, that, as Ruud says, is in absolute lockstep with industry, co-created with industry and co-delivered by industry, which we've lost sight of, unfortunately. And that doesn't mean sort of just viewing it as churning out warm bodies for industry. It means working with employers who are themselves progressive, who understand, as Stephen was saying earlier, what it is that young people are looking for now, and provide environments within which they're able to flourish. So education that is focused on the development of the attributes of students and graduates in ways that really equip them for success. But more than that, I'd say there are other things structurally that need to change. And again, they've been referred to already this morning, which is encouraging. One is to consider the broader role of education. Should education, for example, be an advocate for a more progressive change in industry and in society? And I think this is crucial. So education should have a central role to play in advocating for change on matters relating to environmental degradation, climate change, social justice, systemic racism, areas where our industry needs to be focused on change for the future. You know, we're trying to appeal to young, ideologically minded people who have these issues at the forefront of their mind. And if education isn't providing an environment within which they can see their institution is leading these conversations, then quite frankly, we're going to continue to be viewed as irrelevant. And I think the other area that is important, which again has been touched on, is around diversity and inclusion. And there's two sides to this, I guess. One is, again, are we seeking to lead change? Are we, as educational specialists, saying, quite frankly, despite being one of the most diverse sectors internationally, that diversity is not reflected in senior management positions? Should we be working with industry to provide a talent pool that is more reflective of the diverse society in which we live? In order to do that successfully, we need to celebrate and promote diversity as one of the most powerful and most appealing aspects of our sector. And to do that, we need to create educational environments that are focused on community, that are actively seeking to create culturally diverse, and I don't mean simply international, I mean culturally diverse, attracted from within any one country, communities that are inclusive and supportive and that allow people to flourish, allow members of that community to flourish, not only students, but staff and alumni and all those connected with any new, more progressive institute. And one other observation about higher education as it stands is that it tends to be quite monocultural in its perspective. So universities are great at saying, the most successful ones are great at saying, we welcome students from 50, 60, 70 different countries. We have a wonderfully diverse environment. But then the curriculum that they offer is often quite monocultural and from a particular British or American or Western perspective. And quite frankly, if I was a young person from another part of the world, I would question whether that educational experience was entirely appropriate for me. So root and branch, the nature of the educational experience needs to face up to the issues around social change and diversity and inclusion.
Great, thanks, Don. Ruud, I'm conscious of our time, but one of the things I just want to touch on is hospitality schools often get criticised for the number of people who start the course and then go into other industries. So I think the average conversion rate, please correct me where I'm wrong, is about 27% of people who carry on in hospitality. But is that really an issue? Is that really a problem?
Well, what is hospitality? Is hospitality the prerogative of hotels and restaurants, or are hospitality competences needed, required, rewarded in other business sectors as well, like retail, healthcare, airlines, banking, whatever? And I know, yes, that in the past in particular, I was criticized as well that only 50%, 40% of our alumni or our graduates went into the real hotel business. But when I discussed with them, yeah, you don't own hospitality. It is really something that students can use in any kind of other industries. Then we say, okay, that's fine. So I don't believe that's a real issue. It's also, it makes competition healthier. To be very honest with you, I saw recently a CEO from a healthcare organization in Germany moving back as a CEO for a hotel company. So there are also opportunities, I think, to really then attract people that are working in other sectors and bring them back into the industry. So I don't consider that as a big issue. That's just a fact. Hospitality is not the industry. Hospitality is a function, is a competence, is a lifestyle, is maybe even a new technology which you can use in any kind of other business sectors.
And do you agree with Donald's point that the narrative needs to change now?
Yeah, of course, the narrative needs to change. But also, again, what I would like to reiterate is what Don was saying, that true change into hospitality education comes through true and sincere and reliable partnership with the industry. And if then the industry is defined as hotels and restaurants, or we make that wider and include their many more aspects, that I'm fine with, but it starts there. And it also means that this type of partnership is not just sufficient by saying, okay, we have an advisory board that once in a year gathers and get information, and then a nice glass of champagne and a meal, and then it's over. No, it means industry involved in curriculum development, industry involved in curriculum delivery. Why can't they teach? Why can't they help us or schools in providing real content that's relevant for the industry? So it starts there, and then how we contextualize, in fact, hospitality, that is for debate. But that is, I don't believe that it is the main issue.
And Donald, I'm conscious that we're coming to the close of final comments. I mean, the real opportunity here is about hospitality has a real social role to play, and actually by creating a better social dialogue, hospitality can make a leap forward, can't it?
Yeah, I mean, I reiterating what I said before, I think if you begin to take a broader view of what education is then and focus on the potential social impact, that will appeal to young people. And it's also our responsibility to address these issues as well. So I would say without a doubt, picking up on something Ruud said there, I think also we need a more nuanced conversation nationally and internationally about the appeal of hospitality careers and the opportunities that exist. There is one very positive thing about our sector is that it's got possibilities for people to enter at all levels, as we continuously say, and it's a very open industry. But I think we also need to start promoting the fact that it's an industry for people with high potential, people with aspirations to build exciting management and leadership careers, or go in creative directions, whether it's design or the media or marketing or whatever else it might be. And don't just, in a sense, we put ourselves down when we continuously say it's for everyone, roll up, do what you want, come and join us, I'm not sure that will solve the problem, both as in education and in the sector. We need to be more nuanced and more honest about the exciting opportunities that exist. We're not always great at that, I don't think.
No, I agree. Ruud, final comments on this?
No, I just wanted to highlight, and you were there as well, and Don as well, the fabulous discussion we had last week with a group of a young generation of what we call hospitality leaders. And the input they gave and the responsibility they wanted to have to make education better and to make education more relevant, and the commitment they gave to us in terms of let's do it. That is just fantastic. So I believe there are absolutely no only reasons to change, but there are also immense opportunities, in particular for the younger generation, to make that change happen and to make the influence of industry into what kind of programs are we going to deliver, what type of students are we going to attract, how do we motivate these people, how do we source these people. That is absolutely possible. I see no reasons to believe that is impossible. I think even it is, and it's timing as well. That's the right time to do it.
May I thank you both. This is an important discussion, which I'm sure is going to be a debate that carries on for longer and longer. But thank you both for your time today.
Thanks, Chris.
I very much appreciate it. Thank you very much. And now may I pass on to introduce Russell Kett to introduce the panel. Russell, over to you.
Thank you, Chris, and thank you to Ruud and Donald. It was wonderful to hear these icons of hospitality education stripping back to the bare wood and looking to rebuild from that point. So thank you, guys. I'm very pleased to invite my panel to turn on their microphones, turn on their screens, and join me. Otherwise, I'm going to deliver a long monologue. And thank goodness that everybody's here, everybody who can join us. So with an initial apology on behalf of Alice Woodwork and Raisa de Haas, who I'm sure you're all looking forward to seeing, they have both suffered from lastminute.com urgent business needs to be elsewhere. And what can I say? Elsewhere other than on this panel, it's a mortal blow to all of us who are with you today. But I'm sure that as I welcome our diverse panel to discuss the issue of creating worthwhile careers and rewarding jobs in our sector, and each one of them brings a different perspective. In addition to the questions that I've prepared, I want to encourage you, our distinguished audience, please let us know the issues that are burning in your minds. Whatever those issues may be, please use the Q&A button at the bottom of your screens. Let us know what's bothering you, what's of concern to you. We'll try and answer the questions today, and if we can't, as Karen said at the beginning, we will respond afterwards. Now, I've asked all the panelists to be as brief as they can be with their answers so that we can cover as much ground as possible. So all I can say is let's kick off, and I'm going to ask each of the panelists in one sentence, and I mean one sentence, and usually one sentence means one breath. So tell us, what does your organization do, and what do you do for it? So I'm going to work across my screen as you appear. Frank is at the top left-hand corner. So Frank, what do you do, and what does your organization do?
Hi, Russell. I'm the CEO of Hamilton Hotel Partners, which is part of Pyramid Global Hospitality. We are a full-service management company with 74 hotels in Europe and over 250 worldwide.
I must congratulate you on your lung capacity. That was a great single breath answer. Now, Theo, in addition to being awarded the Young Leader Award at IHIF recently in Berlin, tell us what your organization does and what you do within it.
Thank you, Russell. Hi, everyone. Well, I'm part of Curtin Hospitality. We're a mixed-use lifestyle operator with expansion in Middle East and Europe, and I'm a business development manager.
And he's a third of my age, just so that you all know. Murray Paul, lovely to see you again.
Good morning, everyone. I'm Marie-Paul Knowles. I'm the general manager at the Sofitel London St. James, with a managed 5-star hotel by Accor and recently renovated.
Wonderful. Alison.
Hi, Russell. I'm a partner in the international HR services team at Bird and Bird, which is an international law firm with a sector focus, including on hotels, hospitality and leisure. So I work closely with Karen, who introduced the session.
Wonderful. Joanna.
Hi, good morning, everybody. I'm a director at Whittle, and we're an organisation that is a collaboration community that brings companies together in the space of diversity and inclusion to advocate best practice and make change and real progress. And we work with over 80 companies across the sector at the moment.
And last but no means least, Anthony.
Morning, Managing Director of GIG. We provide flexible staffing support across multiple industry sectors, but our origins and background firmly in hospitality and events.
Okay, so again, a brief one-sentence answer, and I know it doesn't apply to everybody, but what was it? What was it that was the key factor that motivated you to want to develop a career in the hospitality sector? So I'm going to start with you, Anthony, on the basis that you were the last, so you might as well be the first.
For me, hospitality was really a family thing that developed my passion for the industry. Both my parents were in the industry. My first job was washing dishes at 15, and I haven't really left since.
Hope you're doing a little bit more than just washing dishes. So excellent. Joanna, I'm assuming that you don't come from a hospitality background, so I'll pass.
I do.
You do? Oh,
I do. I worked for 8 years with Hilton and restaurants and all different parts of the industry.
Hilton, you're doing their advertising for them. Didn't they do enough earlier?
They did, but I loved it. My dad was in it. I loved it. I studied it at the University of Surrey, and I loved it because it was an incredible experience. So
wonderful. So it's only Alison that I'm going to pass over, unless you're going to tell me that you used to do a job in the hospitality sector. Okay, Marie-Paul, what got you interested?
First of all, I was always passionate by people and by different culture also. And when you put the two together, I think hospitality industry is really the right sector. And in top of it, I always liked complexity. And in the luxury market, it's really about building a strong, engaged team to have an impact on guest journey. So that's also one of the reasons why I'm more on the luxury side.
Okay, and Theo, I know you haven't been in it long, but something must have motivated you in the first place.
Yes, absolutely. Well, I joined the industry 5 years ago with a summer internship in a hotel, where I really got amazed by the integration of all the different departments. And then I continued the career by joining Le Roche into a hospitality university.
Wonderful. Frank, can I tell everybody that we used to work in adjacent hotels in Oxford Street in 1976?
Yeah, it's a long time ago, isn't it? But still NCR 42s then, Russell.
Oh, we weren't allowed them. Yeah,
no, I was attracted to the industry at a relatively young age, 12, 13. I knew this was what I wanted to do, and worked summers in hospitality, and eventually went to Hollings, one of the institutions that the previous panelist talked about. And I think then and now the industry offers tremendous opportunity for those that embrace it.
Okay, well, I think that's enough of an introduction. Let's get into the meat of the session. So each of you, please give some thought to the following. How can we, the people who are really working directly and slightly indirectly in the hospitality sector, how can we enhance the image or the reputation of the sector as a career choice? And in your answer, maybe give some idea to what we really do mean by the words worthwhile or rewarding when it comes to someone's career or job, and how can we value people more. So I'm going to kick off with Marie-Paul, because you're just at the right point in my screen.
Again, I think it has been mentioned before this morning, but it's really, we have to spread the word much better, stronger, be vocal about it, and also at the same time really understand what people are looking for. And for that, we have to be authentic leaders. There is no other way. We attract good people. We will continue to attract good people if really they can trust us on a wider organization, and if we are really authentic leaders.
Excellent. Alison, from your perspective, what do you think we can be doing?
Yeah, I mean, I think this may be a boring lawyer answer, but I'll go with it anyway. Maybe that's why I'm here.
I'm sure you're not a boring lawyer.
But I mean, I think just picking up on something that Stephen said in his introduction, getting the basics right is really, really important. And you know, from a legal perspective, that's true. Equally true as, you know, of making recruitment and the recruitment process welcoming and you know, attracting people that way. I think from a reputational perspective, that is something that hospitality employers in particular really need to watch out for. And I'm thinking particularly about the minimum wage and the HMRC list of shame that they release on a periodic basis. And, you know, the last one that came out, hospitality employers were, you know, they made up over 20% of the employers on that list of 200. And it's an industry that will continue to be a focus for enforcement. So this is something that you just absolutely have to get right. You don't want to be on that list, and you don't want that to be the thing that prospective employees find when they Google you, when they do their research. So I think from a reputational perspective, that is really crucial.
Okay, thanks. Joanna?
I think, you know, I think it's really a lot about being valued and heard. And I think we've heard it in many different guises from the different conversations that we've had. I think even pre-pandemic, people were shifting about what they wanted from their work. And it, you know, and now it's completely shifted, and people, it's no longer enough for a company to have a vision and mission. It's got to have purpose. And the company has to have purpose, and people have to relate to that purpose, and they want to feel valued and they want to be heard. And that, you know, impacts everything from their mental health. You know, we haven't really discussed the impact of the pandemic on mental health and well-being. Well-being is a huge focus for people coming into the industry, and our reputation as an industry doesn't necessarily lend itself to well-being. So I think an inclusion, as you would imagine, that I would say, inclusivity and feeling that you can be who you wish to be and progress and drive through to the very senior levels of our industry, I think is also something that we really need to think about as well.
Lovely, thanks. Anthony?
Yeah, I think we're in a market where the worker has all the power, and whilst we might feel the pain now, I think it's actually in the long run a good thing, because it's forcing us to look at ourselves and understand what it is we need to do to attract this talent, which in the long run should pay dividends. I think we've heard it before around the younger generation and how they don't look at the industry as a career anymore. We have to rebrand the industry. We have to understand what it is that this generation wants out of their career. I'm sure we do many of those things already. We just don't talk about them well enough. Everyone has their own issues, and I appreciate it's difficult to ignore those, and people want to go and solve their own problems, but we truly need a collective approach. I think now is the time for a truly collective approach, perhaps a collective budget in which to tackle this sort of problem of the future generations. There's a here and now issue, but there's a longer term issue down the line that we need to resolve. And I think that involves a rebrand.
You've mentioned the younger generation twice in your response, so it behoves me to ask Theo for his view on this particular aspect.
Yeah. Yes, I'm actually completely in agreement with what Anthony mentioned. Career in hospitality rewarding does not only mean the material rewards, but more of a, let's say, sense of place, which many students or the young generation entering this industry probably do not find, and it's very hard for them to find their place within the industry. So I would suggest, and I would push for a more clarity on the opportunities, the possibilities that are given to the younger generation, to us, when entering this world, and where we might arrive. So usually at university, the main aspiration for everyone is to become a GM. general manager of a hotel. But then when they start really learning a little bit more about the industry, many start deviating and getting into different perspectives. So I think it would be more about giving clarity on what really hospitality is, which is much broader than just the hotel and the general manager. And yeah, that's my point of view.
Thanks. Frank, do you want to bring this one up to a close?
Yeah, I thought Steve Cassidy did an excellent job of presenting Hilton's, if you like, balanced scorecard approach to making the industry more attractive. And no single solution is going to work. And also, different solutions are required for different levels within the industry. So I think you need a strategy for entry level, you need a strategy for senior management, and you need a strategy for middle management. I think we are not advancing the young talent that enters the industry anything like quickly enough, and nothing like as quickly as they are advanced in other sectors. I mean, at Hamilton, we're recruiting mainly graduates and postgraduates with 3 to 5 years industry experience, and we have to put them fully onto responsibility and give them a challenge. And it's the rewards that they get from being given the responsibility that develops them. And I see too many of these graduate programs within brands that produce brilliant graduates, and then they're told, okay, now you're going to spend 2 years managing the coffee shop, and they say, no, I'm not, and leave. And it's utterly crazy.
Yeah. Okay, I'm glad that we're getting some questions from our distinguished delegates. I'm going to come to you in just a second, but a couple of people in that last question were touching on pay. So can we afford not to offer pay rates that are equivalent to those in either the retail or the logistics sectors or whatever as a minimum? And is it still possible to hire the people that we want and pay them the minimum wage? Alison, what do you think from sitting outside? You've probably heard that hotels maybe don't pay enough, but can we get away with it for any longer?
I guess perhaps a minimum wage job is something that someone might accept in the short term as a way to get a foot in the door. But you're only going to keep the people that you want if they see an opportunity to progress away from that, to develop their careers. And I think, and also that they get something other than a wage out of their job. And I guess that's where kind of training and development comes in. It's absolutely crucial. So I guess the answer is yes, but with a big caveat.
Okay. How big a caveat, Joanna?
Well, I think it comes into, it goes beyond the wage in some respects, doesn't it? Because, having worked in hospitality and restaurants, normally sometimes it would be, that your competitors would put up the wage by so much an hour and everyone potentially went there. But it was the organizations that had the right culture and the other things that surrounded that development that really progressed and kind of overcame the salary piece, because let's be honest, the margins are tight, and getting tighter. So there is also the practicality, but what is your culture and what else are you offering to really drive through that progression?
Okay. Anthony, from your perspective?
I think pay is an interesting one, and there's a few factors that relate to it. I think we have to accept that as an industry, we've benefited for a very long period of time from cheap foreign labour. That is no longer available, and people are now having to live up to the cold reality of a UK workforce who quite rightly want more money to do that job. I think we have to look at other industries and look what they're doing, and of course at an entry level make sure that we are on par with that. I think Donald made an interesting point around, we do kind of highlight it's an industry for everyone, but when it comes down to it, we also talk about it as a skill, and people should have a skill to be in hospitality. Therefore, we should pay people appropriately to have a skill level. If we want to attract the right talent, we need to pay for that. I appreciate it's a difficult one at the minute. As you say, margins are tight. but hotels are still making money. So someone should go to the owner and outline that the next couple of years, their net cash is going to be slightly lower than it was the previous years, but you'll get a consistent regular workforce. And that's surely an easier operating problem than having to continually deal with changing staff. So I think pay, whilst we don't always want to talk about it, we have to accept that the stigma and the view of the people looking in is we're a low paid industry for a high work rate.
And Theo, you actually mentioned earlier on that it isn't just the money aspect that attracted you particularly to the sector. What's your view on how people are paid? And this is your opportunity subtly to pitch for a pay rise, by the way, to your bosses.
Well, here I would like to bring back what Joanna was mentioning, that yes, it's not only about the payroll, and it's more about the opportunity that the job gives you. And with the opportunity, of course, is the possibility to grow and to learn from those around you, but also the possibility to join some courses, courses from universities that you can do part-time as out of your job that can help you further grow into your role and to your career. And I think that in most of the companies, this is still very missing. When you're signed up for the job, it's just your 8 to 5 job, and that's it. So I would like to see more and more this integration of learning and possibilities for the ones coming into the industry, whether they are young or they are more advanced in their career. There are courses for everyone.
So Frank, let's come back to the original question. Can we afford not to offer pay rates that are equivalent to those that people can get elsewhere?
Absolutely not. And I would say it's difficult to generalize because there are different pay rates required to attract talent in different markets around the UK. But I would say on average, we've had to move base rates of pay forward by a minimum of 10 and as much as 20% in order to just get applicants. And then it's all about in my view, the mentoring, the buddy system, the ways and means by which you make the engagement with the staff member sticky. You want them to stay. So we're also using, in difficult markets, retention bonuses. You stay till there, you get paid X, you stay till there, you get paid Y. That's good, but it's much better to have an environment where they want to stay. And just on this image and reputation thing, I think the UK, because we operate across Europe, the UK has a bigger problem than many of our European neighbours, where for some reason, hospitality as a sector has a higher reputation and image as an employer of choice. Our problem in the UK, if you're trying to attract an 18, 19-year-old, is the parents are very often very anti-hospitality. Why? Because of this kind of perception that it's low paid, poor hours, doesn't have a career path. And I think what Steve was saying about showcasing people that have succeeded, that have come in at entry level and built successful careers on the reception desk, in the kitchen, on the floor, that's the way to kind of build back a better balance and understanding of the careers that we can offer. And this industry is littered with people that started in the kitchen and are now chief executives. So it's an easy story to tell, but we're not telling it with sufficient frequency.
And I must admit, I've often said that we need to be going into schools, even primary schools, to help to expose people from a very young age to what the sector's all about. Totally agree with you. Marie-Paul, coming back to where you are from the Sofitel London St James, getting hold of people, presumably you can pay people the minimum wage in London. Is that still possible?
I would echo what Joanna mentioned before. Of course, the pay rate has increased over the past, I would say, 12 months. But it's not because you have the highest pay that you will retain the best talent. We have to create an environment where we are able to keep those talents. And for that, it was mentioned before, is how can we create the sense of belonging, but also the first thing is the direct manager. We have to make sure that the direct manager is a good leader, not just the executive team or the number 2 or the GMs. So again, it goes back to what was said. We have to make sure that we have an environment with psychological safety where people can speak up. And once we have that, yes, we can certainly keep our good people. But even though it's fragile, but it's the minimum that we have to do.
Okay. Listen, I'm grateful to people in our audience for raising some questions. So I'm just going to pick them off one by one that we can quickly address. Now, this is a question for Joanna in your role with Whittle. What do you think are the biggest changes that will drive an increase in gender diversity in senior hospitality positions?
Well, it has been mentioned before, and it's very simply, it is around that flexibility to enable progression, in a sense, because, you know, being very anecdotal and top line, you will see a 50-50, you know, roughly a 50-50 split into the industry. And as we go up, it gets less and less. And it's not a shocker that when women have families, it falls off quite significantly, particularly around operational roles as well. So it's having a different approach within our industry to flexibility. Dare I say part-time general managers, part-time operational directors. There might be people shuddering in their seats at that prospect, but you know, we have to have a fundamental shift. And also, it's not just about the more that you drive the narrative between working parents, not just women. Women are not the only parents. So, you know, as long as that narrative, and we're supporting working fathers, we're supporting working parents to enable to share that balance, that is what will fundamentally shift.
Okay,
thank you for the question.
Not at all. I'm just looking to see if anybody in the panel is waving frantically, but they're not. So I shall go. Oh, Alison, go on.
I'm just going to add something to that, just to say, to kind of take Joanna's point on supporting working parents, not just working women. And I think the kind of the statutory pay system and leave system in this country really is skewed towards the mother. And there is shared parental leave, but it requires a woman to give up her maternity leave to enable her partner to take time off. So I think businesses that operate on a more equal basis and have role models at senior levels, male role models at senior levels who take time off and work flexibly, is just as important as encouraging flexibility in general.
Okay, so panel, the majority of hospitality businesses are small to medium size. How can they adjust to the staff need issue? They may lack the structure and training support compared with big companies. So what opportunity is there for the small to medium size employer that doesn't have the access to all the resources that the bigger companies do? Now, you're a bigger company, Sofitel, part of Accor. So do you feel you're qualified to say from a big company perspective? Because I know that Curtin, for example, isn't. So let me just look at the two of you for the initial responses. So Marie-Paul, what can the small to medium-sized business do?
I think by the end of the day, it comes back to what does it mean to be a good employer again. And of course, you don't, for a smaller business size, you don't have the support of a big organization. But how can you be known locally in your local community of being a good employer? Spread the word. I think on every level, it's the same. Certainly, bigger organization like ours or Hilton or all those who just spoke before have bigger signs. But that doesn't mean that on a local level you're not able to do the same. And when you do that, again, you have good people around you.
Are you doing anything in Curtin, Theo, that might be a good example to share with the rest of the panel or to our distinguished audience?
Yes, absolutely. Well, I think that myself also being here, I'm a perfect example of this. So when I joined Curtin is, yes, a medium-sized company, for sure not as big as Accor or the big operators. And we are currently in a fast-growing mode. And it is very attractive it was very attractive to me, and it is very attractive for young generation and the ones entering the company to join Curtin, because you have exposure, first of all, to many aspects that you most likely would not be exposed in other companies. So you have the possibility to speak and directly interact with the leaders and the managers of the company, which of course have great experience and have a lot to share and a lot to teach. So since the first time I joined, I could interact with our CEO Marlus, with all the big bosses and executives from the team, which for sure are great leaders and can give you a good push in your career and make you jump steps probably faster. And I think that would not be possible in a bigger size company where you enter and you probably just interact and deal with your supervisor, which might just be your age or couple years more, and for sure doesn't yet have the experience of the top management.
Thank you. Anthony, I think you're itching to come in.
You know, I think Theo's point bang on in terms of small to medium-sized organisations and the progression that they can offer. And we talked about progression earlier, and progressing the right people and progressing them quickly if they perform. I think you will be in a better possible situation in a small to medium-sized organisation. I also think culture doesn't have to be born out of budget. You know, culture is not something that has to cost money. So just because you're not a large organisation doesn't mean that you can't, develop a culture that makes people want to stay. And if anything, in a market where everyone is clambering for the same resource, being a small to medium organisation, you should be able to move quicker. You should be able to get things done quicker and move through the pipeline quicker. So if anything, I think, okay, you might have to think outside the box a little bit. Money always sometimes makes decision-making a little bit easier. But if you can be creative, I think you're potentially in a better off position, to be honest.
Okay, thanks. Frank, anything to add? Or can I move to the next question?
Well, just quickly, I think it's often easier to get that cultural connection and sense of belonging in a smaller organization, because there's a greater immediacy of access to more senior levels within the organization if it's smaller. The challenge comes if you have a high potential person who outgrows the organization. And this is one of the things I think the industry needs to learn, which is to celebrate people that are moving on and not feel kind of bitter and twisted. We want the industry to succeed, not just individual employers. And if we changed our thinking patterns and said their advancement is a reflection of having had a good time with us, everybody feels happier, and you build up a positive alumni who can help you to sustain growth. So I think it's a shift of attitude that's needed, but small is good. And there's endless online training stuff that's low cost. You can get as much training in a 50-room hotel as you can in a 500-room hotel if the employer is so minded.
Thanks. I have to say, when you're talking about smaller organizations, I empathize with that immensely. And, HVS, relatively small, quite big in its field, but relatively small. But the pleasure and pride I get from watching our alumni grow and develop and to become successful in their new companies and so forth gives me immense pleasure and pride. Our final question from the audience so far. What about older workers, such as are used by B&Q and disillusioned workers who'd worked in the hospitality sector but are left? Can they not perhaps be reintegrated or used in education or training? What do you think, Joanna?
Well, I think the two things there, I think the older worker is an untapped talent pool, a fabulous untapped talent pool that the industry hasn't gone for various reasons, potentially some ages in there. Let's just be honest and call it out. But it's I think if you can, definitely try and encompass that. And And I think in terms of, driving that forward and creating that culture, I think there's, bringing people that are disillusioned. I think the Hospitality Rising campaign, I think, will help with that. But I think, to Frank's point, we should also be welcoming and opening to people who want to come in at different levels in the organisations that don't come from hospitality, that have skills. We know that our skills are transferable out. There are transferable skills in. And, not everyone starts at the front line. So let's be open to that as well. I think that's really key.
Anybody else want to jump in on that question? Anthony, go ahead.
I think flexibility is key to enabling those type of markets. I think we certainly have to look at all demographics in terms of the size of the staffing shortage that we face at the minute. We have to look at how we can cast the net further and wider. But you have to be flexible in that approach. Bringing in people who are perhaps retired but want to do 1 or 2 days a week, you have to have the flexibility within your organisation to offer that. But 9 times out of 10, they're going to be more reliable. They're going to turn up every day. They're going to be there on time, and they're going to do it with a smile on their face. So certainly, I think there are massive benefits in looking at these different demographics that perhaps get overlooked because they can't commit to 40 hours a week or 25 hours a week or whatever that looks like.
Gosh, that was a nice noise. Any of the other panel want to jump in? Just raise your hand if you do. Otherwise, I've got a question that sort of slightly leads on to that. And it may be a good thing, it may not be, and there may be some agreement within the panel, or some violent disagreement, who knows. Is there a place still for 0 hours contracts in the hospitality sector? And if so, when and how? Alison, from a legal standpoint, and looking in, obviously there must be a place because they exist, but what do you think about relating them to the hospitality sector?
Yeah, I mean, they're still there, and they're still legal, subject to certain constraints, and actually the government is looking to make a small tweak to the legislation on 0 hours contracts and effectively ban exclusivity clauses in contracts where someone is being paid less than £123 a week. I mean, how much of an impact is that going to have? Not really sure. I mean, I think there is a place for them, but I think they need to work for both employer and employee, and I think they need to be used ethically. Again, it comes down to how you your reputation and how you use these resources. They may be convenient and useful in an industry where you have peaks in demand. But I think, just think about the woman who arranges childcare to come into work and do her job and then has her shift cancelled at the last minute. What are you going to do to help that person, to give them certainty? So I think, there are few legal parameters around this at the moment, but I think businesses need to put their own policies in place on how they use these contracts to make them fair for both sides.
Marie-Paul, do they exist in your hotel?
No.
Okay. I assume that they don't exist for a good reason, and we'll move on.
Yeah, it was just mentioned. We have to be ethically correct with our people, so it has to be a win-win situation.
How about in your hotels, Frank? Are you employing people on 0 hours contracts, either because you want to or they want to?
Well, interestingly, the they want to part is true, because if you think about the advantages from the employee's point of view, if, for example, they have children at school and they need to take the half terms or the summer holidays off, flexible working, let's call it that, can be a real benefit to them, because there are times when they simply find it difficult to fulfill a regular 40-hour week, and they want that flexibility. So as we go around Europe again, we see lots of annualized hours contracts, which is maybe a fairer way of thinking about this, where you use the hour of labor across the year in a way which is flexible and beneficial to both employer and employee. And we can make this work, but 0 hours has been badged as treating the employee unfairly. Often the employee is the one that wants that flexibility, but we need to tone it down by making sure that they still have job security and predictability of hours. You need to be saying, we'll only set your schedule in 2 weekly intervals so that you always know what's happening. You don't want these schedules cancelling a shift at the last minute. It's just inhumane.
Agreed. Joanna, anything to add to what's already been said?
No, I would just say exactly that is how you use it ethically, and it's really, I think it hasn't helped our reputation as an industry, but I think it could potentially, as Frank said, it can be a two-way thing, but it's how they're used and how they're promoted.
Okay, Anthony, from you, anything? I would assume that it has its role somewhere in the gig economy.
I think it's got the stigma attached to it. I mean, for all intents and purposes, we kind of fall into that category, but we flip it on its head. We show the worker all the work and we let them make the choice. We're not pulling anything away from anyone. We have cancellation policies. If a client cancels within 24 hours, that worker still gets paid for that shift. You have to try and put these things in place to make it fair. But we're very strong about how we communicate what our model is and what it looks like. So anyone who comes and joins our platform is doing so of the understanding and the knowledge that that's what they want to do. And I think 9 times out of 10, you can look at 0-hour contracts and think it's a negative prospect, but that person has made a conscious decision that works for them, that fits their lifestyle, and that's the way they want to operate.
Okay. Theo, I'm looking at you in case you've got something to add, but I'm not expecting for you to need to add if you don't have anything.
Well, actually, yes, I'm quite unexperienced probably with 0-hour contracts, so I have not much to say on that. Just to think about it, I think that nowadays the working force is shifting to this remote work trend. And when we talk remote work, I think it's quite difficult to just count the amount of time you work in hours. So I think that, I don't know, this is probably a question to most of the lawyers and the ones making the contracts, but how remote work will be ruled? How are you gonna have people working from home and counting the work time?
Okay, that's an interesting question to leave us with. And talking of leaving, I'm afraid our time is almost up. So I'm just going to ask each of our panel a last question. And just like with my first question, I want you to answer in one breath, please. So, and you can't choose an idea that someone has already taken. So what one idea do you have that could improve the image of the hospitality sector for someone either seeking a career or perhaps just an initial job? So a single idea, one breath, one sentence. I'm going to give him the opportunity to go first because he certainly can't be expected to think on his feet quite as adeptly as everybody else on the panel. So Theo, what's your single idea? So to create more opportunities that allow the young generation to interface and connect with and learn from the great leaders, not only the supervisors. So create programs which are real management programs and help the individuals that are chosen to grow rapidly with it. Excellent. You should have been a scuba diver. Alison.
I'm not sure I'm qualified to have any groundbreaking ideas here, but I think flexibility is key, trying to think outside the box on how you allow employees to have what they want in terms of their work-life balance and try and destroy this perception that it's a long hours industry where you have to choose between your life and your work.
Okay, thank you. Marie-Paul.
To have a more aligned approach with our entire industry to communicate and spread the word, really much stronger, much bigger.
Thank you. Anthony.
I think for a longer term strategy, we need to really think about how we can strategically target parents. They have a huge impact on the younger generation and what career choice they make.
Thank you. Joanna?
I think building on that, it's about creating the inclusive environment where talent can really thrive. And if I can sneak an extra little one in, role models.
Okay, you can do that in one breath. Frank?
I think switch to a system of promoting ahead of the curve rather than behind the curve. We're not developing the talent quickly enough, and they don't get opportunities early enough in their careers to feel that they want to stay in the industry. So promote earlier.
Wonderful. My advice to anybody is speak to any one of our wonderful panel and you'll get some great advice and some good tips on how to succeed in life. May I therefore, on behalf of all of our audience and my co-promoters and hosts for this wonderful panel, say thank you all, and to hand over to Graham Smith, who will bring us to a close. Thank you so much.
Thanks, Russell. And thanks everybody for joining the session today. Also to Stephen, Ruud and Donald and the various panelists just for giving us their insight and views. And I think it's clear that this is the access to talent and the right pool of people that we need to grow this industry and the various businesses. It's a multifaceted challenge. There's no quick fix. But there are going to have to be some short-term measures and longer-term measures that are put in place to deal with this. And as Stephen said, you know, hospitality is all about people, and that's really the strength of it. You know, they've heard about the rise of ESG issues and diversity and inclusion, that being absolutely critical to the industry as a whole. That we need to. Ruud and Donald talking about the need to adapt and evolve the education systems, the hospitality schools, and also just sell that prospect of what a career in this industry can mean. And then also through the panel around the need to compete with different industries that perhaps we weren't competing with pre-COVID, be competitive on pay. And again, going back to that story of the meritocratic nature of the sector, of people being able to build careers and grow within that, having to embrace both people who want to build careers but also want flexibility. And finally, just it seemed to be the big message is around you know, to tell the story of being good employers, you know, and be supportive of the workforce. If there are kind of gig approaches to work, then do that ethically. And if we can be a diverse and inclusive employer, then that gives us access to the best talent in the market. So a really important topic. I certainly found it insightful from the input from everybody through that. And yeah, just thank you very much for joining. We look forward to people joining again on our next webinar. Thank you.